Death is one of the greatest mysteries of life, and throughout history, cultures around the world have sought to personify it through their mythology. From powerful gods to fearsome spirits, each figure reveals something unique about how humanity has tried to make sense of mortality. In today's video, we're diving deep into the mythology of death, exploring legendary beings like Thanatos and Hades from Greek lore, Hel from Norse myth, Anubis and Osiris from Egyptian belief. But that's not all. We'll uncover how death is portrayed across the globe, including deities, demons and spirits from Japan, Africa, the Slavic world, and beyond. So get ready for an epic journey through time and myth, where we'll unravel the fascinating stories behind every god and goddess of death.
Hi, I am Asa Awan, and you are watching Hermes Mythology. Let's begin.
Thanatos, god of peaceful death. In the depths of ancient Greek mythology, there exists a figure both feared and revered, misunderstood yet essential to the very fabric of existence. Picture, if you will, a being who moves like shadow through moonlit corridors, whose touch is as gentle as twilight, whose presence marks the final breath of every mortal life. This is Thanatos, the god of peaceful death. Many mistake him for a harbinger of terror, but in truth, he is perhaps the most merciful of the ancient deities. Born in the endless night of Nyx, goddess of darkness, Thanatos emerged into existence alongside his twin brother Hypnos, the god of sleep. Their birth was no accident of fate, for what could be more naturally paired than sleep and peaceful death? Like two sides of the same coin, one temporary and one eternal, these twin gods would forever shape the human experience of transition. While their mother draped the world in darkness each night, Thanatos and his brother made their home in the Underworld, residing in a cave where the rivers Lethe and Acheron met. Here, where forgetfulness mingles with sorrow, Thanatos would prepare for his sacred duty, guiding souls to their final rest with dignity and peace. Unlike his more violent counterparts, the Keres, spirits of brutal death, Thanatos represented death's kinder face. He stood as proof that even in their darkest moments, the ancient Greeks saw the necessity of balance, understanding that death, when it comes naturally, is not a punishment, but a transition. Thanatos cuts an imposing yet elegant figure in Greek mythology. Depicted with powerful black wings that carry him silently through the night, he bears a sword at his side and an inverted torch in his hand. Symbols not of violence, but of the severing of life's thread and the inevitable extinguishing of mortal light. Yet his touch is said to be as gentle as a mother's caress, his approach as quiet as falling snow. His power, though absolute, was wielded with remarkable restraint. Unlike many Greek gods who used their abilities to dominate or punish mortals, Thanatos approached his duty with solemn responsibility. He was death without malice, ending without cruelty, a necessity of nature personified in divine form. When King Sisyphus of Corinth cleverly chained death himself, the world fell into chaos. The natural cycle of life was disrupted, causing immense suffering as those whose time had come could not depart. It took the intervention of Ares, god of war, to free Thanatos and restore balance to the world. A powerful reminder that death, in its proper time, is not the enemy, but a necessary part of life's cycle. In another tale, Thanatos confronted Heracles over the fate of Alcestis, who had volunteered to die in place of her husband. Here we see death's complexity through Thanatos' role. For while he came to claim Alcestis as promised, the story shows that even death must sometimes bow to the power of sacrificial love and heroic intervention. Heracles wrestled Alcestis from death's embrace, and Thanatos, recognizing the extraordinary nature of such devotion, acquiesced. These stories paint a portrait not of a cruel reaper, but of a divine being bound by duty and cosmic law, capable of recognizing and respecting the rare exceptions to his eternal task. The figure of Thanatos offers us profound insights into how the ancient Greeks viewed death, not always as a terrifying end, but often as a natural transition to be approached with dignity. In their wisdom, they recognized that by personifying peaceful death as a god, they could better grasp its role in the grand cycle of existence. In our modern world, where death is often sanitized, hidden away, or denied, the myth of Thanatos reminds us of a more nuanced understanding. He teaches us that there is grace in acceptance, dignity in natural endings, and that death, when it comes in its proper time, need not be met with terror, but with peaceful resignation. Perhaps the ancient Greeks, in their deep wisdom, understood something we often forget, that the end of life, like the setting of the sun, can hold its own kind of beauty. For in Thanatos' gentle embrace, they found not an enemy to be feared, but a guide to be welcomed when the natural time of transition arrives. Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it. This ancient truth, embodied in the myth of Thanatos, still whispers to us across the centuries, reminding us that in every ending lies the seed of new beginnings. In every farewell, the promise of peace. Keres, female spirits of violent death, in the shadows of Greek mythology, where glory and doom dance in eternal embrace. There lurk spirits more ancient than the gods themselves. Picture a battlefield at dusk. The clash of bronze has faded, but dark shapes move between the fallen warriors. Their black wings spread wide against the blood-red sky, talons gleaming as they descend upon the dead and dying. These are the Keres, daughters of Nyx, the night herself. Neither gods nor monsters, but something far more primal. They are the very essence of violent death, drawn to battlefields like moths to flame. Some say they were born in the same dark moment as the Fates, their sisters in destiny's design. But while the Fates weave the thread of life, the Keres hunger for its violent end. The Keres emerged from Nyx's primordial darkness alongside their siblings, death, doom, sleep, and discord. Ancient texts speak of them as a sisterhood, their number unknown, perhaps as countless as the ways a warrior might fall in battle. In Hesiod's Theogony, they are described as the Keres, clothed in white but clashing their dark teeth, grim-eyed and fierce. This striking contrast, white-robed death spirits with eyes that gleam with battle lust, captures their essence as beings who straddle the line between divine purpose and savage nature. Unlike their brother Thanatos, who represents peaceful death, the Keres embody death's violent aspect. They are the personification of cruel fate on the battlefield, the moment when bronze meets flesh, when glory turns to horror. Born in an age before the Olympians, they answer to no god, bound only by the ancient laws that governed the universe's darkest corners. To understand the Keres is to understand war itself, brutal, merciless, and indiscriminate. These spirits appear as women with great dark wings, their talons sharp as swords, their eyes burning with an insatiable hunger for carnage. They don't simply observe death, they revel in it. Their presence on the battlefield is marked by a terrible beauty. They dart between clashing warriors like dark butterflies, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Keres possess an almost vampiric nature, drinking the blood of the fallen through their sharp teeth. But more than mere scavengers, they actively participate in battle's chaos. Their talons can pierce armor. Their strength can overwhelm even the mightiest heroes. Some accounts describe them wielding weapons of their own, blood-stained robes that entangle their victims, or ropes to drag the dying to the underworld. Perhaps the most famous appearance of the Keres comes during the weighing of fates in Homer's Iliad. As Zeus holds his golden scales to determine who shall fall, Achilles or Hector, the Keres hover nearby, eager to claim their prize. This scene reveals their true nature as agents of fate itself, present at every crucial moment when a hero's thread might be cut short. Another chilling tale speaks of their role in the battle of Heracles against Geryon. As the mighty hero faced the three-bodied giant, the Keres circled overhead, their shadows dancing across the battlefield like omens of doom. Yet Heracles, blessed by the gods, drove them back with his arrows, proving that even death's handmaidens could be denied their prey, if only temporarily. During the great wars of ancient Greece, soldiers would speak of hearing the Keres' wings in the wind before battle, their shrieks mixing with the trumpet's call. Some warriors claimed to see them perched on their shields like ravens, marking those destined to fall. These stories reveal how deeply the Greeks understood that violence and death were not merely physical acts, but spiritual forces with their own terrible will. The Keres represent more than just battlefield death. They embody the chaos and cruelty inherent in violent conflict. Their existence in Greek mythology speaks to a profound understanding that war's horror goes beyond the physical realm. They are the psychological shadows that haunt soldiers, the moment of panic when a warrior realizes their end is near, the lingering trauma that follows those who survive. In modern terms, we might see the Keres as personifications of war's psychological toll, the unseen wounds that warriors carry home from battle. Their mythology reminds us that violence leaves marks deeper than physical scars, that death in war is rarely clean or noble, but often savage and senseless. What makes the Keres particularly haunting is their impartiality. Unlike the gods, who often chose sides in mortal conflicts, the Keres sought only to satisfy their hunger for violence and death. They cared nothing for justice or glory, treating hero and coward alike. In this, perhaps, lies their deepest message, that in war's chaos, death comes for all, regardless of rank or reason. As we reflect on these ancient spirits, we might ask ourselves, have we truly left the Keres behind in mythology? Or do they still circle our battlefields, wearing different forms, but carrying the same eternal hunger? Hades, god of the underworld deep, beneath the earth's surface, where no sunlight penetrates the eternal gloom, there sits a throne of obsidian and gold. Upon it reigns a god who rules not over the living, but the countless dead who pass through his dark gates. Unlike his more celebrated brothers Zeus and Poseidon, who claim the heavens and seas, Hades presides over a kingdom few wish to enter, and none may leave. Yet in the shadows of his underground realm lies a tale of justice, power, and surprising compassion that challenges everything we think we know about death itself. The Greeks spoke his name in whispers if they dared speak it at all. They called him the Wealthy One, the Hospitable, and the Unseen, anything to avoid invoking his true name. But who really was this misunderstood deity who drew the shortest lot in the cosmos, yet built the most enduring kingdom of all? Hades proved to be perhaps the most just and orderly of all the gods. In his kingdom, every soul faced true equality. Whether king or slave in life, all stood equal before his throne. Unlike his brothers, who frequently meddled in mortal affairs, Hades maintained strict cosmic order. He understood that while life might be unfair, death and justice must be impartial. The artifacts of his power spoke to both his authority and character. His helm of darkness, gifted by the Cyclops, granted him perfect invisibility, fitting for one who preferred to rule from the shadows rather than seek glory. His two-pronged fork, like Poseidon's trident, could shake the earth itself. Yet he wielded such power sparingly, knowing his role was to maintain balance, not disrupt it. Despite his fearsome reputation, Hades' most famous tale reveals a surprising capacity for love. The story of Persephone's abduction shows both his passion and his complexity. Struck by Eros's arrow, he became enamored with the spring goddess, daughter of Demeter. When he took her to his realm, her absence caused Demeter such grief that she plunged the world into endless winter. Yet what began as a seemingly tragic tale transformed into something more nuanced. Persephone ate 6 pomegranate seeds in the underworld, binding herself to Hades' realm for 6 months each year. She became a powerful queen in her own right, ruling alongside him as an equal. Their marriage, though beginning in controversy, proved more faithful and stable than most divine unions. While Zeus had countless affairs, Hades remained devoted solely to his queen. Perhaps most revealing is the tale of Orpheus, whose music moved even the stoic lord of the dead. When the grieving musician descended to plead for his lost love, Eurydice, Hades and Persephone were so touched by his song that they agreed to break their own immutable laws. Though Orpheus ultimately failed to retrieve his love, the story shows Hades' capacity for mercy and understanding of mortal grief. Even in his role as keeper of wealth, for all precious metals and gems lay in his underground domain, Hades showed remarkable restraint. Unlike other gods who demanded constant tribute and sacrifice, he sought no temples or elaborate worship. He understood that all mortals would eventually enter his realm. There was no need to rush or coerce their arrival. The Greeks' complex relationship with Hades reflects humanity's eternal struggle to understand death itself. They feared him, yes, but also recognized his essential role in maintaining cosmic order. Without death, there could be no renewal. Without judgment in the underworld, there could be no justice for the deeds of the living. In our modern world, where we often push thoughts of death to the margins of consciousness, Hades offers timeless wisdom. His realm reminds us that death is not an end, but a transformation. that true justice knows no privilege or prejudice, that even in the darkest places, love and mercy can flourish. What lessons might we learn from this God who ruled from the shadows? Perhaps that power wielded with restraint is greater than power flaunted, that true justice requires detachment from mortal dramas, that even death itself can harbor surprising gifts. His story reminds us that sometimes the most profound truths and the most admirable qualities can be found in the places we least expect to find them. Goddess of death and ruler of Helheim, in the depths of the Norse cosmos, beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, lies a realm shrouded in eternal twilight. Here, where the mists of Niflheim meet the shadows of ancient secrets, rules a goddess whose very name became synonymous with the afterlife itself. Half living, half dead, her face a stark reminder of life's duality. Hel, daughter of Loki, sovereign of the Underworld. They say when she walks, frost flowers bloom in. Her footsteps and the echoes of countless souls whisper her name through corridors of ice and stone. Neither wholly beautiful nor entirely horrifying, she embodies the ultimate truth. Death comes for all, making no distinction between the mighty and the meek. But there is more to her tale than mere endings. In her realm, secrets of existence itself lie waiting to be unveiled. Let us journey into the depths of Helheim, where every shadow holds a story and every story holds a truth waiting to be discovered. Born to Loki, the trickster god, and the giantess Angerboda, Hel entered existence alongside her brothers, the great wolf Fenrir and the world serpent Jomungandr. From her first breath, destiny marked her as different. The gods looked upon her with unease, for her appearance foretold her purpose. Her body split vertically, one half that of a beautiful maiden, the other a corpse-like visage of decay. The Allfather Odin, seeing both danger and opportunity in her existence, cast her into the depths of Niflheim. But what was meant as banishment became coronation. In the realm of primordial ice and mist, Hel found her true purpose. She transformed this desolate space into Helheim, her kingdom, where she would receive the souls of those who died of illness or old age, not in glorious battle, but in the quiet moments between great deeds. In her realm, Hel's power knows few bounds. She commands legions of the dead, yet rules with quiet dignity rather than tyrannical might. Her hall, Eljudnir, stands as a testament to her authority, a place where feasts are eternally laid out, though the food turns to ash in the mouths of the dead. Here she sits upon her throne, dispensing justice and wisdom with unwavering certainty. Her very presence commands respect. She moves with the grace of a queen and the finality of winter's first frost. The living who glimpse her cannot forget the duality of her form, one side radiant with life, the other a constant reminder of mortality. This duality grants her unique insight. She understands both the warmth of life and the cold embrace of death, making her judgments both harsh and merciful. Perhaps no story better illustrates Hel's nature than the death of Baldur, the beloved god of light and purity. When Baldur was slain by his blind brother Höder through Loki's trickery, the god sent Hermoda to Helheim to plead for his return. Hel received him in her great hall, seated on her throne of dead men's nails, her expression unreadable as stone. She set her terms with careful precision. If every being in all 9 worlds would weep for Baldur, she would release him back to the living. It seemed a simple task. Who would not weep for the beloved god? But a single giantess, Thurk, thought to be Loki in disguise, refused to shed tears. Thus, Hel kept Baldur in her realm, demonstrating that even the gods must bow to the laws of death. Another tale speaks of her role in Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. When the final battle begins, it is said that Hel will provide ships made from dead men's nails to carry armies of the deceased to war. She will release her subjects to fight alongside the giants against the gods, including her father Loki, who once gave her life, but also orchestrated events that filled her halls with the dead. Hel's influence extends far beyond Norse mythology. Her name echoes in the Christian concept of hell, though her realm was not one of punishment, but simply the destination for those who died outside of battle. In her story, we find profound truths about acceptance, inevitability, and the natural order of existence. She teaches us that death is not always violent or glorious. Sometimes it comes quietly, in darkness and solitude. Yet even in this quietude, there is dignity. Hel's dual nature reminds us that life and death are not opposites, but two faces of the same eternal cycle. Odin, guide of fallen warriors, thunder rolls across the 9 worlds as ravens circle the battlefield, their wings casting shadows over fallen warriors. In the midst of this carnage stands a figure, tall and commanding. An aged wanderer with one piercing eye, his midnight blue cloak billowing in the wind. This is Odin, the All-Father, who walks among the dead not as a harbinger of doom, but as a guide to glory eternal. For in Norse mythology, death was never an ending, but a gateway to something greater. He and his Valkyries seek out the bravest warriors at the moment of death. These chosen ones, the Einherjar, are carried to Valhalla not in shame or sorrow, but in triumph. There they feast in Odin's great hall, training each day for Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Among the most powerful tales of Odin's role in death is the story of young Sigmund, the Völsung king. When Sigmund, aged and wounded, faced his final battle, Odin himself appeared on the battlefield. The god who had once gifted Sigmund his legendary sword now stood before him one last time. With a sweep of his spear, Odin shattered Sigmund's blade, a sign that the king's time had come. But this was no punishment. It was an honor, a personal escort to Valhalla by the All-Father himself. Another tale speaks of Odin's testing of King Vikar. Appearing as an old man, Odin blessed a spear with his magic, transforming what was meant to be a mock execution into a true sacrifice. Though seemingly cruel, this act elevated Vikar from a mere king to a chosen warrior of Valhalla, proving that Odin's ways, while mysterious, always served a greater purpose. The god's influence extended even to the realm of poetry, as told in the tale of the Mead of Poetry. After gaining this precious liquid through cunning and sacrifice, Odin shared it with humanity, gifting us the power to speak of death and glory in verses that would echo through the ages. This shows his role not just in taking lives, but in preserving the memory and meaning of those lives through sacred verse. In Norse society, Odin's role as a death deity brought comfort rather than fear. His selection of the fallen was seen as the highest honor, transforming the tragedy of death into a triumph of spirit. This perspective helped create a culture that valued bravery and honor above all else, where living well meant dying well. Even today, Odin's complex nature as both wisdom seeker and death guide speaks to fundamental human truths. His eternal quest for knowledge reminds us that wisdom often comes at a great price, while his role in death teaches us that endings are also beginnings. Perhaps most importantly, his gathering of fallen warriors shows us that what matters is not how long we live, but how well we live, and that our deeds can echo long after we're gone. As our world grapples with questions of mortality and meaning, Odin's ancient wisdom still resonates. Death is not the end of the story, but merely a chapter in a greater saga. For in the halls of the All-Father, every warrior's tale lives on, and every honorable death becomes a legend. Where death is but a doorway, and valor never fades, there walks Odin the All-Father, gathering heroes for the final battle at the end of days. Anubis, god of mummification and the afterlife, as the sun sets over the pyramids, casting long shadows across the desert. Imagine the ancient Egyptians looking to the horizon, knowing that this powerful deity would one day guide their souls through the darkness. In the earliest days of Egyptian civilization, when the Nile first cradled human settlement in its fertile banks, Anubis emerged from the collective consciousness of a people seeking to understand death's mysteries. Born to Nephthys and Osiris, though raised by Isis, his origins reflect the complex tapestry of Egyptian divine relationships. The ancient texts tell us he was the first god to master the art of mummification, practicing his sacred craft on none other than Osiris himself. After Set's betrayal scattered the god's body across Egypt, the Egyptians chose the jackal as Anubis's manifestation with profound purpose. These creatures roamed the desert cemeteries, their howls piercing the night, but rather than view them as desecrators of the dead, the Egyptians recognized their protective nature. By embodying the jackal, Anubis transformed a feared scavenger into a sacred guardian, watching over both the physical remains and the spiritual journey of the deceased. Anubis's power extends far beyond mere protection of tombs. As he who is upon his mountain, he surveys all of Egypt's necropolis, ensuring no soul loses its way. His hands, skilled in the sacred art of mummification, work with both precision and reverence. Each wrapping of linen, each sacred oil, each magical incantation serves a greater purpose, preserving not just the body, but the very essence of the deceased for their journey into eternity. In his role as psychopomp, guide of souls, Anubis leads the dead through the treacherous paths of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. His presence is both commanding and comforting, his knowledge absolute. The Book of the Dead speaks of him as he who counts the hearts, for perhaps his most crucial role awaits in the Hall of Two Truths. Picture, if you will, a vast chamber deep within the otherworld. Here, before the assembled gods, Anubis performs his most solemn duty. At the center of this divine court stands a golden scale, and upon it Anubis places two weights. In one dish, the heart of the deceased, and in the other, the feather of Ma'at, symbol of truth, justice, and cosmic order. This is the moment every Egyptian both feared and prepared for throughout their life. The heart, believed to be the seat of the soul, must prove itself worthy. If it balances against the feather, the deceased may enter the eternal paradise of the field of reeds. But should the heart prove heavier, weighed down by sin and wrongdoing, a terrible fate awaits. Amit, the devourer of souls, stands ready to consume the unworthy heart, condemning the soul to oblivion. Yet Anubis is no mere executioner. The ancient texts reveal him as an advocate for the deserving, sometimes speaking in defense of souls who lived justly. His judgment is fair, his wisdom profound, his commitment to cosmic order unwavering. The grand tapestry of Egyptian mythology, Anubis stands as a bridge between worlds, not just between life and death, but between chaos and order, fear and comfort, ending and beginning. His enduring legacy teaches us that death need not be feared when life is lived with purpose and truth. The careful attention he gives to the preparation of the dead reminds us of the dignity inherent in all human beings, extending beyond the threshold of mortality. Today, as we gaze upon ancient Egyptian art and architecture, Anubis's striking form still captures our imagination. His jackal-headed silhouette speaks to something deep within our collective consciousness, the universal human desire to understand death, to find meaning in mortality, and to believe that someone or something watches over us in our final journey. As the sun sets once more over the ancient sands, consider this. Perhaps Anubis's greatest gift to humanity was not his role in preserving the dead, but in teaching the living how to face mortality with dignity, preparation, and hope. For in his realm, death is not an end, but a doorway, and beyond it lies the possibility of eternal life. O Anubis, who presides over the sacred land, I have come to you with truth. My heart has no falsehood. Osiris, god of the afterlife and resurrection, green-skinned and crowned in white, wrapped in the bandages of death, yet radiating the power of eternal life, Osiris stood as Egypt's first divine king and judge of the dead. Osiris embodied the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. His green skin reflected the fertile soil of the Nile Valley, promising that life would spring anew from apparent death. The crook and flail he carried spoke of his dual nature, the shepherd's crook of gentle guidance, the flail of necessary judgment. In his presence, it was said, the worthy felt peace while the guilty trembled. The myth of Osiris speaks to humanity's deepest hopes and fears. In his death and resurrection, we see reflected our universal desire to transcend mortality. Yama, god of death and the underworld. In the earliest Vedic texts, Yama emerges as the son of Vivasvat, the sun god, and Saranya, the goddess of clouds. Born as twins with his sister Yami, their story begins not with death, but with life and profound devotion. Yama was the first mortal who chose to die, accepting death not as a curse, but as a sacred responsibility. By taking this brave step into the unknown, he became the blazing torch that illuminated the path all souls must eventually travel. The ancient texts speak of how Yama's decision transformed him. No longer merely mortal, he ascended to become Dharmaraja, the Lord of Justice, and established his kingdom in the south where the souls of the departed would find their way. His skin turned green like summer leaves. His eyes gained the wisdom of ages, and he mounted a magnificent water buffalo, symbolizing both strength and patience in his eternal duty. Yama's dominion extends far beyond mere death. As Lord of the Pittas, ancestors, he presides over a vast cosmic courthouse where every soul must account for their earthly deeds. In his right hand, he holds the danda, a rod of punishment that represents his authority to uphold cosmic law. But in his left hand rests a noose that binds souls not for torture but for guidance, ensuring none stray from their destined path through the afterlife. His court is said to be more magnificent than any earthly palace, with walls of pure gold and seats of diamond. Here, aided by his scribe Chitragupta, Yama reviews the record of every life with perfect fairness. The good and evil of each soul are weighed not with harsh judgment, but with divine understanding. For Yama knows the struggles of mortality. He was, after all, once mortal himself. Perhaps the most famous story of Yama comes from the tale of Savitri and Satyavan. When Yama came to claim the soul of Satyavan, his devoted wife Savitri followed the death god into his own realm. Her love and wisdom so impressed Yama that he granted her a boon, any wish except her husband's life. Savitri, clever and determined, wished for 100 sons with her husband. Yama, bound by his word and moved by her devotion, had no choice but to restore Satyavan to life, for how could she have children with a dead man? Another powerful tale speaks of the young sage Nachiketa, who waited at Yama's door for 3 days while the death god was away. Upon returning, Yama was so impressed by the boy's patience and determination that he granted him 3 boons. Instead of asking for wealth or long life, Nachiketa sought the ultimate knowledge of what lies after death. Yama's teachings to this brave young soul became the foundation of profound spiritual wisdom in the Katha Upanishad. These stories reveal Yama not as a frightening specter, but as a teacher and upholder of dharma, cosmic law and duty. His judgments are tempered with compassion, his punishments aimed at spiritual growth rather than mere retribution. Even the fearsome noose he carries serves not to strangle, but to guide souls along their destined path. Today, Yama's legacy reminds us that death is not an end, but a transition governed by divine law and justice. In temples across Asia, he is depicted not as a fearsome reaper, but as a green-skinned deity seated on his buffalo, embodying the natural order of life and death. His very name has become synonymous with self-control and moral duty, Yama. In Sanskrit also means restraint, reflecting his role as the upholder of cosmic order. What wisdom can we draw from this ancient lord of death? Perhaps it's that justice and compassion are not opposing forces, but complementary aspects of divine law. Or maybe it's the profound truth that death, like Yama himself, is not our enemy, but our guide to understanding life's deeper meaning. As we close this chapter of our journey through death's mythology, consider this. In choosing to be the first to die, Yama didn't just become death's master, he became humanity's greatest teacher about living. For in his court, every soul learns that it's not the length of life that matters, but the depth of our adherence to dharma, to righteous living, and compassionate action. Time is ungovernable, but grief is but wisdom. Kaali emerged from the brow of Durga, the great warrior goddess, in a moment of divine rage. As demons threatened to overwhelm the world, Durga's fury took physical form. A woman as dark as a starless night, with 4 arms wielding weapons of cosmic destruction. Her tongue, red with the blood of evil, lolled out in defiance of all who would threaten Dharma, the cosmic order itself. But Kaali was no mere aspect of another deity. She quickly established herself as a force of nature, a primordial power that existed before time itself. In the ancient texts, she is called Adya Shakti, the original power, the source from which all creation and destruction flow. She represents Shakti in its purest, most unrestrained form, the raw energy that drives the universe's endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The Morrigan, phantom queen in the mists of ancient Ireland, where battles echo through time and fate weaves its unseen threads, there dwells a figure more feared than death itself. She appears as a young maiden, a battle-scarred warrior, or an ancient crone, sometimes all three at once. Over blood-soaked fields, she soars in the form of a raven, her cry piercing the veil between life and death. This is the Morrigan, the great queen, goddess of war, fate, and sovereignty. Her true power lies not just in ending lives, but in deciding who is worthy to rule, to fight, and to die. But to know the Morrigan is to understand that death in battle was never simply about ending a life. It was about transformation, about the power that flows through destruction and rebirth. Like the ravens that follow in her wake, she is keeper of secrets that mortal minds dare not fathom. What mysteries lie in the shadow of her wings? What prophecies echo in her battle cry? The origins of the Morrigan reach deep into Ireland's mythological soil, where she emerged as part of the Tuatha De Danann, the supernatural race who ruled Ireland before the coming of mortals. Her name itself tells us of her power. Morrigan can mean phantom queen or great queen, though some scholars argue it derives from mare, a terrifying spirit, combined with Raigan, meaning queen. But she is not one, but three, a triple goddess appearing as Badb, the crow, Macha, the sovereignty, and Nemain, the frenzy. Together, they form a trinity of battle, fate, and death. In the tales of old Ireland, the Morrigan's power manifests in ways both subtle and devastating. She is mistress of the arts of war, but not as a mere dealer of death. Rather, she embodies the psychological aspects of warfare, the terror that grips a warrior's heart, the battle frenzy that transforms men into beasts, the prophetic visions that foretell victory or doom. Her magic lies in shape-shifting, in prophecy, and in the power to influence the tide of battle through fear and inspiration. One of her most famous appearances comes in the tale of Cú Chulainn, Ireland's greatest hero. As a young warrior, he encounters the Morrigan at a river crossing. She appears to him as a young maiden of unearthly beauty, declaring her love and offering her aid in battle. But Cú Chulainn, focused solely on his warrior's path, rejects her, advances. The goddess's response reveals her true nature. She vows to interfere with his fights in the form of various animals, testing and challenging him at every turn. True to her word, during Cú Chulainn's greatest battle, she appears as an eel attempting to trip him, a wolf driving cattle against him, and a red heifer leading other heifers to interrupt his combat. Each time he wounds her, not knowing her true identity. Yet in the end, when he lies mortally wounded, it is the Morrigan who perches on his shoulder in raven form, marking the passing of Ireland's greatest champion. This complex relationship demonstrates her role not just as a destroyer, but as a tester of heroes, ensuring they are worthy of the glory they seek. She wielded powerful magic that could cloud minds with fear or fill hearts with battle rage. She could cast spells of binding and loosing, create confusion among enemy ranks, and summon storms to aid her chosen warriors. Her prophetic powers allowed her to see not just the future, but the hidden truths in men's hearts, judging their worthiness to rule or fight. As we reflect on the Morrigan's place in Celtic mythology, we see more than just a goddess of war and death. She represents sovereignty, the true power of the land and the right to rule it. She tests, challenges, and transforms, embodying the harsh but necessary forces that forge heroes and kings. Her ravens still wheel over ancient battlefields, reminding us that in every conflict, physical or spiritual, we are tested and transformed. What would the Morrigan see if she looked upon our modern battles? Perhaps she still watches, not over clashing swords, but over our internal struggles, our fights for justice, our moments of transformation. For in her darkest aspect, she teaches us that sometimes we must face destruction to achieve renewal. And in her wisdom, she shows us that true sovereignty begins with mastery of ourselves. I am the queen of every battle. I am the storm over the sea. I am the meaning of all poems. I am the raven at death's gate. Look well upon my many faces, for in them lies the truth of power, of fate, and of the eternal dance between life and death. The story of Don begins in the mists of Ireland's earliest days, when the Milesians, the ancestors of the modern Irish people, first sought to claim the Emerald Isle as their own. As the leader of these ancient warriors, Don was proud, fierce, and determined. His name itself means the Dark One, or the Brown One, reflecting both his noble bearing and perhaps foreshadowing his future role as ruler of the dead. But pride often comes before a fall, and Don's tale is no exception. When the Milesians challenged the Tuatha De Danann, the supernatural race who ruled Ireland, for dominion over the land, Don committed a grave error. He spoke with arrogance and disrespect to Eriu, one of the three goddess queens of Ireland, spurning her blessing and claiming they would take the island by force alone. This hubris would prove fatal. As the Milesian ships approached Ireland's shores, the Tuatha De Danann summoned a great magical storm. Amid howling winds and towering waves, Don's ship was dashed against the rocks near what is now called Bull Rock. As he and his crew drowned in the churning waters, Don underwent a profound transformation, from mortal warrior to immortal psychopomp, from conquering leader to eternal guardian. In his new role as Lord of the Dead, Don took up residence in Tech Duin, his supernatural fortress on the edge of the Western Sea. This remote isle became known as the gathering place of the dead, where souls would congregate before their final journey to the otherworld. But unlike many death deities across world mythology, Don is not portrayed as a malevolent figure. Instead, he serves as a father figure to the deceased, the first ancestor welcoming his children home. Don's powers are subtle but profound. As keeper of the Western Gate, he has dominion over the sunset hours when the veil between worlds grows thin. He commands the storm winds that sweep in from the Atlantic, and his voice can be heard in the thunder that rolls across Ireland's western shores. But perhaps his greatest power lies in his role as psychopomp, the guide who helps souls transition from the world of the living to the realm of the dead. One of the most poignant tales of Don comes from medieval Irish literature, where he is said to call out to each soul as they approach death. In these stories, the dying would hear the voice of their ancestors carried on the wind, welcoming them to Tech Duin. It was said that on stormy nights, when the wind howled and waves crashed against Bull Rock, one could hear the voices of the dead singing together in Don's great hall. Another powerful myth tells of how Don would appear to those near death in the form of a dark horse galloping across the waves, an image that merged with the later legend of the Puka, a shape-shifting creature of Irish folklore. This representation speaks to both his noble nature and his role as a transitional figure, carrying souls across the boundary between life and death. Perhaps the most touching stories are those that speak of Don's special care for those who die. Far from home, it was believed that he would personally guide these lost souls back to Irish soil, ensuring they found their way to Tech Duin and their final rest. This aspect of his mythology resonated deeply with generations of Irish emigrants who feared dying far from their ancestral lands. The cultural significance of Don extends far beyond ancient mythology. His figure embodies the Celtic understanding of death not as an end, but as a transformation, journey home to the company of one's ancestors. This perspective offered comfort to countless generations, suggesting that death was not to be feared but accepted as part of life's natural cycle. In many ways, Don represents the Celtic ideal of a good death, one that comes with acceptance, dignity, and the knowledge that we will be welcomed by those who have gone before us. His myth reminds us that we are all part of an unbroken chain stretching back to our first ancestors and forward to our last descendants. As the sun sets over Bull Rock today, one might still feel Don's presence in the whistling wind and crashing waves. Aron, king of the otherworld deep in the mists of Welsh mythology, lies a realm beyond our mortal world, Annwn, the Celtic otherworld. Unlike the grim underworlds of other cultures, this mysterious domain pulses with life, magic, and eternal youth. But make no mistake, its ruler is no gentle sovereign. Ron, the crowned king of Annwn, commands both fear and respect as Lord of the Dead and master of supernatural hounds that hunt mortal souls. Picture, if you will, a figure draped in shadow and starlight, moving through an eternal twilight realm where time flows differently than our own. His crown, forged from raven's feathers and moonlight, marks him as sovereign of a kingdom where the lines between life and death blur like morning fog. But who is this enigmatic ruler, and how did he come to reign over the realm that awaits us all? Let us begin in the ancient forests of Wales, where the veil between worlds grows thin, and the baying of otherworldly hounds still echoes through forgotten valleys. Unlike many deities of death, Aron's origins remain shrouded in mystery. The Welsh traditions speak not of his birth or rise to power, but rather of his actions and influence on both the mortal realm and his supernatural kingdom. In Anubis, he presides over a court of eternal splendor, where magic flows like wine and beauty never fades. His realm is said to exist beneath the earth, yet it is no dank cave or somber grave. Instead, it is a land of perpetual twilight, where magnificent fortresses of crystal and stone house feasts that never end. Aron's power manifests in multiple aspects that set him apart from other death deities. As Lord of Anwen, he commands the Kaali Anwen, the white hounds of the otherworld. These spectral creatures, with fur as white as morning frost and ears stained red like sunset, hunt alongside their master during the wild hunt. Their howls are said to be loudest when they are far away, growing softer as they approach their prey, a haunting warning to those whose time draws near. But Aron's influence extends beyond death itself. He is a master of illusion and transformation, capable of altering his appearance at will. His realm is not a place of punishment or eternal darkness, but rather a parallel world of feasting, hunting, and magical knowledge. This perspective suggests death was seen not as an end, but as a transformation, a passing from one state of existence to another. Ereshkigal, goddess of the underworld, in the depths beneath ancient Mesopotamia lies a realm of shadows, where the echoes of mortality resound through vast chambers of stone and darkness. Here, upon a throne of lapis lazuli, sits a figure both terrible and tragic, Ereshkigal, queen of the great below. Unlike the radiant gods who dwell in the heavens above, she rules a kingdom few wish to enter, and none may leave. Yet her story is far more than a tale of gloom and death. It is a journey into the very heart of fate, power, and the price of divine duty. Before we descend into her dark domain, ask yourself, what would it mean to be the keeper of all that ends? To be both feared and needed, to maintain the delicate balance between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. In the beginning, Ereshkigal was a goddess of the heavens, dwelling among the stars with her divine kin. But fate had other plans. When the universe was young and the gods divided the cosmos among themselves, she was given dominion over the underworld, not as punishment, but as a sacred trust. The Mesopotamians called her domain Irkalla, or Kur, a vast city of dust and darkness where all souls, regardless of their earthly status, would eventually journey. Yet Ereshkigal was no mere jailer of the dead. Her powers extended far beyond the simple keeping of souls. She was the embodiment of divine justice in its most absolute form, wielding the tablet of destinies within her realm. With a single word, she could bind or release. With a glance, she could judge the weight of a heart. Her very presence commanded such authority that even the other gods had to bow 7 times when entering her domain, removing their power and glory piece by piece as they descended through the 7 gates of the underworld. But perhaps her most fascinating aspect was her connection to the cycles of nature itself. In Mesopotamian thought, death was not merely an end, but a transformation. Just as grain must be buried in the dark earth before new life can spring forth, so too did Ereshkigal's realm serve as a place of both ending and potential renewal. Her powers were those of absolute finality, yet also of the deep wisdom that can only come from understanding life's full circle. Among the most compelling tales of Ereshkigal is her encounter with Nergal, who would become her husband. The story begins with a feast in heaven, to which Ereshkigal, bound by her duties, could not ascend. Instead, she sent her vizier, Namtar, to collect her portion. All the gods rose to honor her representative, all except Nergal. This slight against her dignity could not go unanswered. When Nergal was forced to journey to the underworld to make amends, what began as a confrontation transformed into an unexpected passion. Their love story was as intense as it was tumultuous. Mani. When Nergal attempted to leave her realm, Ereshkigal's grief shook the foundations of the underworld itself. She threatened to raise all the dead unless he was returned to her, showing that even the Queen of the Dead could be vulnerable to love's power. Eventually, Nergal returned of his own accord, choosing to share her eternal reign. Perhaps even more famous is the tale of her interaction with her sister, Inanna, the Queen of Heaven. When Inanna descended into the underworld, allegedly to mourn a funeral but actually seeking to usurp her sister's power, Ereshkigal demonstrated both her wisdom and her terrible justice. She forced Inanna to pass through 7 gates, removing 1 article of power at each gate until she stood naked and powerless before Ereshkigal's throne. The Queen of the Dead then struck her sister dead with a single glance, hanging her corpse on a hook like common meat. This act, while seemingly cruel, represented the fundamental truth of Ereshkigal's realm. Before death, all are equal. Even the Queen of Heaven had to learn that some powers and places were beyond her reach. Yet even this story speaks to cycles rather than endings. Through complex negotiations and sacrifice, Inanna was eventually permitted to return to the world. Above, though not without cost, the influence of Ereshkigal reaches far beyond ancient Mesopotamia, resonating with truths we still grapple with today. In her complex character, we see reflected our own relationship with mortality, the fear and resistance, but also the profound transformations that can only come through accepting life's darkest passages. She reminds us that endings are not merely conclusions, but doorways to understanding deeper truths. Consider this. In a world that often runs from the very thought of death, what wisdom might we gain from Ereshkigal's unflinching gaze? Perhaps her greatest lesson is that power and wisdom sometimes dwell in the places we fear to look, and that true sovereignty comes not from avoiding darkness, but from embracing it as part of life's complete circle. As an ancient Mesopotamian hymn declares, "Praise to Ereshkigal, Queen of the Great Below, who knows the weight of all hearts, who guards the final gate through which all must pass. In her wisdom lies the truth of endings, and in her realm the seeds of all beginnings." Mictecacihuatl and Mictecacihuatl, lords of the Aztec underworld, deep beneath the earth. In a realm where darkness holds eternal dominion, there exists a place the ancient Aztecs called Mictlan, the final destination for most mortal souls. Here, in this kingdom of shadows, 2 formidable deities reign supreme: Mictlantecuhtli, the lord of the underworld, and his consort, Mictecacihuatl, the Lady of the Dead. Their story is not merely a tale of death, but a profound meditation on life itself, for in Aztec thought, death was not an end, but a transformation, a journey through 9 challenging levels of the underworld that would ultimately lead to rest and perhaps rebirth. Picture, if you will, a god adorned in black, his skeletal form decorated with eyes on every joint, watching all who enter his domain. Beside him sits his queen, equally magnificent and terrible, her flesh stripped away to reveal the bones beneath, her jaw opened wide to swallow the stars at dawn. Together, they guard the bones of creation itself, the sacred remains from which humanity was born and to which all must eventually return. But what mysteries lie within their dark realm? What ancient wisdom did the Aztecs encode in these powerful deities who ruled over the final journey every soul must take? Join us as we delve into the depths of Mictlan, where life and death dance in eternal partnership and where the boundaries between endings and beginnings blur into shadow. In the beginning, when the gods gathered to create the world, they knew that for there to be life, there must also be death. From this primordial understanding emerged Mictlantecuhtli and Mictecacihuatl, born from the void between worlds, tasked with maintaining the delicate balance between existence and non-existence. Mictlantecuhtli arose as a figure of duality, both destroyer and preserver. His name, meaning Lord of Mictlan, carries the weight of his authority over the 9th and deepest level of the underworld. The Aztecs depicted him as a figure both terrifying and majestic, a skeletal being with blood-spotted body and curly hair of obsidian black. His regalia spoke of his power, a necklace of human eyeballs, ear spools of human bones, and a crown adorned with owl feathers, the bird of night and wisdom. Mictecacihuatl's origins are equally profound. Known as Lady of the Dead, she emerged, as a powerful force in her own right, not merely a consort, but a co-ruler of the underworld. Legend tells that she herself died in infancy, making her intimately acquainted with death's embrace from the very beginning. This early departure from the mortal realm imbued her with unique insight into the nature of death and transformation. Together, these deities wielded powers that touched both the realm of the dead and the world of the living. Their domain, Mictlan, was not simply a place of punishment or reward, but a necessary stage in the cosmic cycle. Unlike the Christian concept of hell, Mictlan was neither a place of eternal torment nor a realm of judgment. It was a place of transformation, where souls completed their journey through 9 challenging levels before finding their final rest. Mictecacihuatl's powers extended beyond mere guardianship of the dead. He was keeper of the bones of previous creations, protector of the seeds that would become future life, and master of the owls whose calls pierce the night. His role was complex. While he could bring disease and death, he also preserved the potential for new life within his realm. Mictecacihuatl's powers complemented and balanced those of her husband. She watched over the bones of the dead, ensuring their preservation for the future resurrection that the Aztecs believed would come at the end of the cosmic cycle. During the festival of Toxcatl, she would open her skeletal jaw to swallow the morning star, helping to maintain the balance between day and night, life and death. One of the most significant myths involving these deities tells of the creation of humanity itself. When the god Quetzalcoatl sought to create humans, he needed the bones of previous creations, which were guarded jealously by Mictecacihuatl in the depths of Mictlan. Quetzalcoatl descended into the underworld, facing Mictecacihuatl's challenges. The Lord of the Dead set impossible tasks, demanding that Quetzalcoatl blow a shell with no holes and gather precious bones while walking around his realm 4 times. But Quetzalcoatl was clever. He called upon worms to bore holes in the shell and used it as a conch trumpet. He also tricked Mictecacihuatl by having beetles accompany him, making it appear as though he had walked the circuit multiple times. When Quetzalcoatl finally obtained the precious bones, Mictecacihuatl, enraged by the deception, ordered his servants to dig a pit in the underworld. Quetzalcoatl fell into this trap, and in his fall, the bones shattered into pieces. This is why, the Aztecs said, humans are of different sizes. Some pieces were larger, others smaller. Yet from these broken bones, mixed with the blood of the gods, humanity was born anew. Another crucial myth centers on Mictecacihuatl's role in maintaining cosmic order. During the festival of Toxcatl, as dawn approached, she would open her massive skeletal jaw to swallow the morning star. This act was vital to the continuation of the day-night cycle and symbolized the constant struggle between light and darkness, life and death. The Aztecs believed that this daily ritual was essential to prevent the stars from overwhelming the sun, which would lead to cosmic chaos. Mictecacihuatl's action represented the necessary consumption of light by darkness, ensuring that the cycle of day and night, and by extension life and death, continued unbroken. Perhaps the most detailed myth surrounding these deities involves the journey that souls must undertake through the 9 levels of Mictlan. This wasn't a journey of moral judgment, but rather a necessary process of transformation that every soul must complete. First, the soul must cross a deep river aided by a Xoloitzcuintli, a hairless dog specially bred for this purpose. Then comes the passage between 2 mountains that crash together, followed by a trek across a mountain covered in obsidian knives. The soul must then brave the place of the freezing winds, where bitter cold cuts like knives and jaguar spirits prowl. The 5th level brings arrows that rain from all directions, while the 6th presents a passage through which the soul must crawl as bats screech and bite. The 7th level tests the soul with waters that must be crossed, and the 8th brings 9 treacherous rivers that must be navigated. Finally, after 4 years of travel, the soul reaches the 9th level, the domain of Mictecacihuatl and Mictecacihuatl themselves. Here at last, the soul finds rest, having been stripped of all earthly attachments through its arduous journey. The complex mythology surrounding Mictecacihuatl and Mictecacihuatl reveals profound truths about the Aztec worldview. Unlike many other cultures that viewed death with pure dread, the Aztecs saw it as a necessary part of the cosmic cycle, not an end, but a transformation. This understanding continues to influence Mexican culture today, most notably in the celebration of Dia de los Muertos, where death is not feared but embraced as part of life's journey. These deities remind us that death is not simply an absence of life, but a force that gives life meaning. Just as Mictecacihuatl guarded the bones that would become humanity, death preserves the potential for new life. As Mictecacihuatl swallowed the stars to maintain cosmic balance, we too must accept that endings are necessary for new beginnings. The 9 challenges of Mictlan mirror our own spiritual and emotional journeys through life's difficulties. Each obstacle, the soul faces, the mountains that clash, the obsidian knives, the freezing winds, represents challenges we all must overcome in our own paths toward understanding and acceptance. In our modern world, where death is often sanitized and hidden away, the wisdom of these ancient deities offers a different perspective. They teach us that death is not something to be feared or denied, but a natural part of existence that gives shape and meaning to life itself. The Lord and Lady of Mictlan remind us that in accepting death's reality, we learn to live more fully, more authentically, and with greater appreciation for the precious gift of existence. Camazotz, the bat god of death. In the darkest caves of ancient Maya, where shadows dance like living things and the air thrums with the beat of leather wings, there dwells a god whose very name was whispered in terror. Camazotz, Lord of Bats, Master of the Night, and Bearer of Sacred Death. Picture, if you will, a time when the boundary between our world and the divine was as thin as a bat's wing, when the echoes of sacred stories carved themselves into the very stones of temples, and when death itself wore the face of a creature that ruled the spaces between day and night. Through the mists of time, through the whispers of countless generations, we journey now into the realm of one of mythology's most fascinating and fearsome deities. What mysteries lie in the embrace of darkness? What wisdom can we glean from this ancient lord of the night? Let us venture together into the shadowlands of Maya mythology, where life, death, and transformation dance an eternal ballet beneath the wings of the bat god. Deep in the heart of Mesoamerica, where mighty civilizations rose from the fertile earth and touched the very stars, Camazotz emerged from the profound spiritual understanding of the Maya people. Unlike the gentler faces of death found in other cultures, this deity manifested as a being of primal power, part bat, part man, wholly divine. In the great Maya codices and stone carvings, Camazotz appears as a creature of impossible presence. Massive bat wings that could embrace entire cities, eyes that held the darkness of the deepest caves, and claws that could harvest the souls of mortals like ripe fruit from a tree. The origins of Camazotz are intertwined with the Mayas' deep respect for the bat as a creature of transformation. Living in the liminal space between earth and sky, between darkness and light, bats embodied the very essence of transition, a perfect symbol for the passage between life and death. The Maya observed how these creatures emerged each evening from the mouths of caves, like souls taking flight from the underworld, only to return at dawn, completing an eternal cycle of departure and return that mirrored their understanding of life, death, and rebirth. Izanami, the goddess of death, there dwells a goddess whose tale speaks to the very heart of creation itself. Before there was death, there was love, and from that love, a tragedy so profound it would forever alter the balance between the realms of light and shadow. This is the story of Izanami, the first goddess of death in Japanese mythology, whose journey from divine creator to ruler of the dead reveals ancient truths about love, loss, and the delicate balance between life and death. As morning mist parts to reveal sacred mountains and endless seas, we begin our journey into a time when the world was young, and 2 divine beings stood ready to give birth to a nation. But fate, as we shall see, had other plans. For sometimes the greatest darkness is born from the purest light. Before she became the sovereign of shadows, Izanami was a goddess of creation. Together with her husband Izanagi, she stood upon the floating bridge of heaven, gazing down at the primordial ocean below. The gods had given them a mighty task to create the first lands of what would become Japan. With the jeweled spear Ame no Nuhoko, they stirred the cosmic waters until the first island, Onogoro, emerged from the depths. Their union was blessed, their purpose divine. As husband and wife, they circled a celestial pillar in opposite directions, and upon meeting, they began the sacred ritual of creation. Though their first attempt failed due to Izanami speaking first, a breach of cosmic etiquette, their second attempt succeeded, and from their union, the Japanese archipelago was born. Izanami's powers were initially those of creation and fertility. Every island that emerged from the sea, every deity born from her union with Izanagi, showcased her ability to bring forth life in all its forms. She was mother to the gods of water, wind, mountains, and trees. But it was the birth of Kagutsuchi, the god of fire, that would transform her destiny forever. The flames of Kagutsuchi burned Izanami mortally as she brought him into the world. As she lay dying, her body continued to create. From her suffering sprang forth more deities, born from her tears, her cries, and her final breaths. In death, she gained dominion over Yomi, the shadowy land of the dead, becoming its queen and guardian. Her power now extended to both creation and destruction, life and death, light and shadow. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching chapter of Izanami's story is what followed her descent into Yomi. Izanagi, consumed by grief and love, refused to accept their separation. He pursued her into the underworld, breaking ancient taboos in his desperate quest to bring her back to the realm of light. In the darkness of Yomi, Izanagi found his beloved, but she was no longer the radiant goddess he had known. She begged him not to look upon her, for she had eaten the food of the underworld and become one with the realm of death. But love and curiosity proved stronger than wisdom, and Izanagi lit a torch, breaking his promise. What he saw transformed their love into horror. Izanami's once beautiful form had become a rotting corpse, crawling with maggots and decay. In his terror, Izanagi fled, and in her shame and rage, Izanami pursued him. "Every day," she cried out in fury, "I shall take 1,000 lives from your world." To which Izanagi responded, "Then I shall give life to 1,500. Thus was born the eternal cycle of life and death, a dance of creation and destruction that continues to this day. Izanagi sealed the entrance to Yomi with a boulder, creating a permanent barrier between the world of the living and the dead. And so husband and wife, once united in creation, became eternally separated, one in the realm of light, the other in shadow. Izanami's transformation from creator to death goddess reflects profound truths about the nature of existence. Her story teaches us that creation and destruction are not opposing forces, but rather two faces of the same cosmic reality. In her role as Queen of Yomi, she reminds us that death is not merely an end, but a transformation, a necessary part of the eternal cycle of existence. The tale of Izanami and Izanagi's separation speaks to universal human experiences of loss, grief, and the impossible desire to breach the barrier between life and death. Their story warns us about the consequences of refusing to accept the natural order, while also acknowledging the depth of love that drives us to rage against the dying of the light. Morana, goddess of death in the depths of Slavic winter, when darkness claims the land and frost etches intricate patterns on window panes, ancient whispers tell of a goddess whose very name was feared. Morana, sovereign of death and winter's cruel embrace. As snow falls in the deep forests of Eastern Europe, her presence still echoes through time, in the bitter wind that steals the warmth from bones and the killing frost that claims the last autumn leaves. But Morana is more than just death's face in Slavic mythology. She is the embodiment of nature's eternal cycle, the harsh truth that all things must end for new life to emerge. Some say that on the coldest nights, when the moon hangs like a frozen tear in the sky, you can hear her voice in the howling wind, a reminder that even gods must bow to the laws of seasonal change. But what dark wisdom does this ancient goddess hold? And why did our ancestors both fear and honor her in equal measure? Born from the primordial forces that shaped the Slavic world, Morana emerged as the daughter of Perun, the thunder god, and Mokosh, the earth mother. Unlike her celestial siblings, she was marked by darkness from the beginning. Her domain was not the bright realm of summer skies or fertile fields, but the shadowy borderlands between life and death, warmth and cold, growth and decay. In the earliest tales, she appears as a young maiden of extraordinary beauty, with hair as white as fresh snow and eyes that held the darkness of midwinter nights. But as the wheel of the year turned, her form would change, reflecting the seasons themselves. In spring she was the maiden, in summer the mother. But it was in winter that she revealed her most fearsome aspect, the crone of death. Wrapped in frost and shadow, Morana's powers extended far beyond simple death. She was the mistress of winter's magic, commanding frost and ice with a mere gesture. The freezing of rivers, the falling of snow, the bitter winds that cut through the warmest furs, all were manifestations of her will. But perhaps her most terrifying power was her ability to induce Mara, nightmares that would plague both gods and mortals, haunting their sleep with visions of their deepest fears. Her symbols spoke to her dual nature, the wheat sheaf representing the death of summer's bounty, the white ribbon symbolizing the purity of snow and the binding of fate, and the ever-present raven, messenger between the worlds of the living and the dead. In her hands, she held a staff of power, said to be carved from the world's first dead tree, through which she could command the forces of winter and death. Among the most powerful stories of Morana is her eternal dance with Jarilo, the god of spring and fertility. Their tale is one of passion, betrayal, and the endless cycle of seasons. Each year, Jarilo would return from the realm of the dead, seeking to marry Morana. Their union would bring spring's warmth and summer's abundance to the world. But inevitably, Jarilo would prove unfaithful, turning his attention to other goddesses or mortal women. Morana's response to this betrayal was terrible to behold. In her fury, she would strike Jarilo dead, transforming from the beautiful bride of spring into the fearsome crone of winter. Her grief and rage would manifest as killing frosts and howling blizzards, destroying the fertility that Jarilo had brought to the land. Yet as the wheel of the year turned again, Jarilo would be reborn, and the cycle would begin anew. Another tale speaks of Morana's contest with Veles, the dragon god of the Underworld. Veles challenged her authority over death, claiming that he alone should rule the realm of the deceased. Their battle raged for 9 days and 9 nights, with Morana ultimately proving victorious by trapping Veles in ice so cold it could freeze even a god's breath. This victory established her as the true sovereign of death, respected even by the most powerful beings in Slavic mythology. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of Morana lies in the rituals that Slavic peoples performed, and in some places still perform, to mark the end of winter. In a ceremony known as the Death of Morana, communities would create an effigy of the goddess, often dressed in white and decorated with ribbons and beads. As winter drew to a close, they would carry this effigy in procession to the nearest river or lake. There they would strip it of its decorations, set it ablaze, and cast it into the waters, symbolically destroying winter's power and making way for spring's return. This ritual speaks to a profound truth about Morana's nature. She is not evil, despite her association with death and darkness. Rather, she is necessary, a fundamental force that maintains the balance of existence. Without winter's death, spring's rebirth would have no meaning. Without endings, there could be no beginnings. Mengpo, the Lady of Forgetfulness. Mengpo emerged from Chinese Buddhist tradition, though her influence extends far beyond religious boundaries. Unlike many deities who command vast powers or rule over grand domains, she chose a more subtle but equally profound role. According to ancient texts, she was once a mortal woman who achieved enlightenment through her deep understanding of human suffering and the cycle of reincarnation. The Jade Emperor, recognizing her wisdom and compassion, appointed her as the guardian of memories in the afterlife. In Chinese mythology, she became known as one of the 10 kings of Hell, though her position differs markedly from her colleagues. While others judge and punish, Mengpo serves as a gentle facilitator of transition, helping souls prepare for their next journey through life. Her pavilion, the Tower of Forgetfulness, stands at the border between death and rebirth, a place where past and future blur into a single moment of transformation. Mengpo's primary power lies in her famous 5-flavored tea of forgetfulness, known as Mengpo soup or Changwang in Chinese tradition. Each ingredient represents a different aspect of memory that must be released: joy, sorrow, love, hate, and desire. The brewing process itself is said to be an art form, with Mengpo carefully adjusting the mixture for each soul's specific needs. But her true power extends beyond mere forgetfulness. She possesses the ability to see all of a soul's past lives, understanding the complex web of karma and experience that shapes each spirit. This knowledge allows her to determine exactly what each soul must forget to begin their next life without prejudice or predetermined suffering. It's said that she can taste a person's entire lifetime in a single sip of tea, allowing her to craft the perfect blend for each individual. One of the most famous stories about Mengpo tells of a soul who refused to drink her tea. This spirit, a grieving mother, couldn't bear to forget her children from her previous life. Mengpo listened to her story with infinite patience, letting the woman speak of her loved ones and the life she had left behind. Instead of forcing the tea upon her, Mengpo shared with her the wisdom of countless cycles of rebirth. "Your love for them is beautiful," she told the mother. "But it is precisely because of this love that you must drink. Your children will live their own lives, and you must be free to live yours anew. The memories may fade, but the love that created them will shape your soul in ways that transcend memory itself." Another tale speaks of a warrior who believed his memories made him strong. He boasted that he would remember his past life through sheer force of will. Mengpo simply smiled and offered him the tea. "Strength lies not in clinging to what was," she said, "but in having the courage to embrace what could be." The warrior, moved by her words, finally understood that true strength meant accepting the necessity of change. Perhaps the most profound story of Mengpo is one that reveals her own burden. According to legend, she alone remembers every life, every joy, every sorrow of all who pass through her pavilion. She carries the weight of countless lifetimes within her, a living library of human experience. Yet she performs her duty with unwavering compassion, understanding that forgetting is not a punishment, but a gift. A chance to experience life's wonders anew, unmarred by the shadows of past existence. As you consider her tale, ask yourself, what memories would you choose to keep if you stood before Mengpo's pavilion? What burdens would you gladly release into her gentle care? Perhaps in pondering these questions, we might find our own form of wisdom in the delicate balance between remembering and forgetting. Before the next life begins, all must drink from my cup. In forgetting lies the freedom to begin again. And that brings us to the end of our journey through the mythology of death, from the somber Thanatos of Greek lore to the fierce Kaali of Hindu tradition, from Anubis guiding souls in Egypt to Mictecacihuatl ruling the underworld in Mesoamerica. Each culture's perspective on death gives us a glimpse into their beliefs about life, the afterlife, and the unknown. Which of these gods or spirits resonated with you the most? Or did we miss any fascinating figures you'd like to see covered? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this deep dive into mythology, don't forget to give this video a like, share it with fellow mythology lovers, and hit that subscribe button for more fascinating explorations of ancient stories and traditions. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the myths that shape our world.